All right, everybody, welcome back to the ROS Media channel. And today we're also streaming live across all of our socials. So if you're joining us on Facebook, Instagram, X, or even YouTube, welcome. Today is a big conversation that we want to have. And welcome back, Ian, as well to the channel. We're going to be stepping back slightly from the sort of day-to-day protocols that we would normally discuss and really look at the bigger picture today. You know, what's happening globally, what direction things are heading in, and ultimately, what does it mean for each and every one of us over the next 5 to 10 years? You know, the reality of what's coming and the speed at which it's being executed right under our noses, to be quite honest with you, while the world stage distracts the masses from what's going on. To me, it's nothing short of horrific, you know, because in a recent paper that you put out, Ian, and we're going to talk about that, you laid out what can only be described as a pretty stark warning, I think, to people that humanity may be sleepwalking into one of the biggest threats of freedoms that we've ever seen. So today we're going to break that down. We're going to understand what's actually happening behind the scenes, and more importantly, what can be done about it. Ian, welcome back to the channel. I mean, as per usual, why don't we start with the problem first? But, you know, this time, why it's more serious than anything else, you know, that we've discussed to do with the protocols. Because to me, the biggest issue here is that the vast majority of people don't even recognize there is a problem. So maybe we could talk about that first of all, you know, the actual problem at hand. Are we really sleepwalking into the biggest threat to freedom? You know, what are you seeing that most people aren't?
Well, you know, I'm tuned in to a lot of experts who've been studying this subject for a long time. You know, my expertise is the game of Monopoly and credit recoupment and all the things, all the protocols, and my deep, you know, background in financial services and algorithmic trading systems and insurance and investments and all that stuff that I know inside and out. But probably I'd say for about 15 years, and more intensively in the last 10 years. I don't really watch much TV. I occasionally watch some football because I'm an ex-footballer. I like to watch the football. Sometimes I watch a movie, and that's about it really. And the rest of the time, I have got a portfolio of content providers that spend their time looking at what's going on around the world that you don't see on the media. And looking into subjects which are so blatant when you get your head into them that if you join them all together, what's really going on with the, you know, in my opinion, there's absolutely no doubt that there is a very coordinated worldwide plan of control. And it's been running for a long time. And there's all different layers of this control agenda that most people are completely unaware of. And there are content providers out there that I'm watching. I mean, people like Max Egan, what an amazing guy that is. You know, he runs the channel called The Crow House. I mean, he's just next level. His ability to understand what's really going on and then to report on it. He's got a huge worldwide network of people sending content to him of what they're seeing, what's going on. He's been doing it 30 plus years. You know, you've got G. Edward Griffin with he's got his Red Pill University, huge range of guests that come on his channel. He's in his 90s now. He's been talking about this since the 50s. You've got David Icke, obviously, who's, you know, for the best part of his research, I think he's right on point. There's a few weird things that he talks about, which a lot of people don't resonate with, but the central theme of what he's talking about is on point. You've got more modern, more sort of recent guys like Jeff Berwick at the Dollar Vigilante and Acapulco and his annual conference and all the people that speak there. And then you've got people like Sarah Westall, who's got a huge channel, and then you've got people like Greg Hunter on USA Watchdog, and if you listen, there's loads of others, of course, but if you were to spend a few hours a week listening to the people that they interview, to their analysis on what's going on, and where they're dedicating most of their time to the study of the control agenda, you don't really need to look much further. You can go and look into the guests that they interview, which is often what I do, and it's not difficult really to figure out after a while what is going on. And it's not people's opinions; they point to the evidence. There's some very, very smart people that they are being interviewed on all these different channels that literally dedicate their focus to this subject. And many of them have got a specialist subject that they talk about. Whereas someone like Max Egan's general, he's got a general knowledge across the whole subject. Then you've got specialists that come on that talk about their specialist area. And I think you've even interviewed some of those sort of specialists on our channel. So when you put all this together, and then you zoom out of that, and then you might sort of tune into YouTube because you're looking for something, and then you see all the videos that are going up on YouTube, and they're topically talking about the Iran war, or they're talking about the potential invasion of Cuba, or they're talking about the Ukraine war, or they're talking about Epstein, or whatever it is that they're talking about, right?
Yeah.
And you're thinking, well, these things that people are looking at are very, they're very interesting to look at. But is it not just a distraction?
Mm-hmm.
Is it not just what I would call bread and circus? Because the real agenda that's rolling out is the total control of our mind, body, and soul.
Well, let's talk about that.
You can't really say it any more simply than
no,
that.
I know. It's I mean, that's shocking in itself, isn't it? If you stop and you think about that. In your paper, you describe the next decade as a period of rupture, as you call it, rather than continuation. What do you feel that means in practical terms for everyday people?
Well, most people spend their life with their focus on what I call artificial things on the Monopoly board that feel very real, that have a real consequence. They're all playing Monopoly. Some people spend their life playing on the artificial Monopoly board because they want to accumulate more tokens, more digits, more stuff. And that's what they wake up every day and they do that. And some of them are pretty good at playing Monopoly, and they focus and dedicate their attention on accumulation. I was one of those for a while, although I wasn't doing it to accumulate. I was doing it for problem solving. I was trying to solve problems on the Monopoly board, and I'm still kind of doing that now. Other people are spending a lot of their focus on trying to navigate through some very difficult times in their life where they've got really big problems like bankruptcy looming, or mortgage foreclosure, or bailiffs, or maybe they're in a lawsuit. Maybe they've got problems with their marriage. Maybe they've got problems with their kids. Maybe they've got problems with their health. So a lot of people are focusing a lot of their attention on immediate danger. I would describe it like that. And of course you do. When you've got an immediate danger, you can't really ignore it. You've got to focus on it. You've got to pay attention to it. And then you've got some other people who are a little bit away with the fairies, a little bit, because they're focusing on things which are esoteric type stuff. So they're focusing a lot on things that are theories, or things that they lack a bit of substance to me, and they spend a lot of their time in sort of dream world, dreaming about things that don't really matter, in my opinion. Me being a very factual, logical kind of a guy, there's a lot of stuff out there that doesn't really matter, one way or the other in the big picture. Because what I believe everybody should be focusing on is the problem, which is ultimate control.
Yeah.
Now, it's not a problem for some people though, because some people actually want to be controlled. They don't want to make decisions. They don't want the burden of deciding what to do about anything. They're quite happy to be told what to do, where to go, and how to go there. Now, I think a lot of people are in that category.
Yeah.
If you look at all the armies around the world, obviously people that join armies, navies, air forces, they want to be involved in a culture where they're told what to do.
Yeah, in a chain of command, I guess. Yeah.
And they're quite happy with it. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that they shouldn't be doing it, because if it suits their personality, why not? But for those people who don't want to be told what to do, where to go, and how to go there, which of course is me, and I'm sure you are the same.
Yeah.
I don't want to be told where to go, how to go there, and all those kind of things. I want to have my own decision. I want to make my own decisions on what I do and how I do it. I don't like being told by other people who've got an agenda what I should be doing and how I should be doing it. And those are the people that are, that I'm looking to attract into the Republic of Old Souls. I don't want to attract people that just follow orders. I want people that have got a bit of an independent spirit about them.
Yeah.
They've got something to add, something to bring. So the problem really, if you just make it really simple, is that for most of us, certainly if you get into my age bracket, if you go back to when I was 20, 40 years ago, I can hardly believe it, but 40 years ago, you wouldn't have dreamed of looking on the internet to decide what to do. No. Or where you're going to go. You'd go to the travel agent if you wanted to have a holiday, and you'd look in the brochures.
Yeah.
There was no internet to look at.
No.
If you wanted to find something out, you might go to the library.
Yeah.
Yeah, literally, you might go into the library, or you'd go and borrow a book from somebody because you wanted, or you'd go and ask somebody that you thought knew about the subject, and that's what you did. Or you might go on a course and learn about something. In today's modern age of information, and especially with the AI that's coming in all around us, I don't know very many people that go to the library anymore. No. I don't know many people that went to the library when I was 20 either, but there's even less people going to the library now. So we've become very, very reliant on the information that comes from the internet. And that's deliberate. That's part of the problem. Nearly everything that we trust is probably originating from somewhere on the internet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as I think I said,
it must be true.
If it's on a computer, it's got to be true, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's somehow the computer's got like some superior, it's almost like a spell. It's like, it gets us into a spellbound state where if it's coming out of the computer, it's got to be true. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's programming to believe that the computer can't be wrong. Yeah. The old saying, the computer says no, or the computer says yes. So, you don't really question it. It says no, it says no. And that's, we've been programmed into that. I think that gradually over all the years the internet's been around. And as I said on another interview, I think it was with Mel Clark recently, does anybody ever wonder why they don't get a bill to access the internet?
Yeah, funny that.
You don't get a bill, do you? You get a bill to maybe pay for the data that you're downloading on your phone, or your broadband, or your internet connection. But nobody bills you for using the internet.
No, it's unlimited access, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. You could be on there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
And yet you never get a bill. And I think that's very revealing, because everything else on the monopoly board, you've got to put some digits. You've got to transfer some energy somewhere to access these things that you want to access, but not the internet.
You go park your car in the centre of London for 20 minutes and see how much that costs you these days. Yeah, no, I get that. You mentioned a minute ago about AI, and that was one of the segments that we want to cover today. This AI disruption. I mean, one of the first major threats highlighted in your report is AI. A lot of people see AI as an opportunity, don't they? And to some extent, we see it as an opportunity to streamline things within the Republic of Old Souls, just from an administrative point of view. So I get that, but you're framing it in the report as something much more disruptive. Why?
It's very clear to me. I've done a lot of research on, first of all, AI has been around for a long time.
Yeah.
A lot of people think, oh, it's just coming out in the last couple of years. Like it's some new invention that somebody woke up a few years ago and said, aha, I've just figured out how we could get artificial intelligence to work. No, it's been around for a long, long time. And what happens is that it's being rolled out gradually so that we don't get shocked by the new technologies.
Yeah.
Because that's what they tend to do. Those that are running this controlled agenda, what they do is they don't give us everything in one go. They sort of drip feed it in, because I think a lot of people are very afraid of change.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's good, whether it's change for the better or change for the worse. It doesn't seem to matter. A lot of people are very afraid of it because it's new, it's different from what they did before, or what how they were doing things before. And therefore, a lot of people's conclusion and reaction is, well, I've got to be afraid of it because it's different.
Yeah.
So rather than roll out these advanced technologies that have all been around for a long time, they gradually drip feed them in. And then what they tend to do, and this is one of David Icke's early realizations, is that they create the problem, they get you to react to the problem, and then they bring the solution.
Yeah.
So, the AI is similar to me to the internet. I remember when the internet first became available, I remember paying to dial up to the internet.
Yeah, me too.
You had a modem. Yeah, you had a modem. It made a very strange, whistly, scratchy type of noise.
That's right.
And if you started to connect to the internet with your modem, everybody knew that you were logging on to the internet, because the modem used to make this screechy,
horrible, squealing, squeechy noise. Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember the first time I ever used it was to get some data on insurance quotes, because I was running some life insurance quotes, back in the early 90s. And that ordinarily, you go to a book and you get all your rates table out, and you'd have to calculate the cost of the insurance for your client, blah, blah, blah. And it was like, could take you half an hour to figure out what the premium was going to be for your client that you were looking to quote some insurance to. And now you could go online through, connect through your modem, get into the internet, and boom, there's your table of all the different insurance costs from all the different carriers and providers of insurance. And it's like, wow, that would have taken me hours to have figured all that out before. And I might have got it wrong. I might have actually recommended the third most expensive policy rather than the cheapest policy for the same job, because I didn't realize, because my research may have not been very efficient. So I remember that, and it was like a revelation that you could do these types of things. Okay, you had to pay to dial up to the internet, but again, the actual internet itself was free. And if you then compare that to what's happening with AI, if you want to sign up for AI at the moment, invariably you've got to pay for it. Yeah, you have got to pay for AI. There is a monthly license fee for AI. And there's a whole range of different AIs out there. And I've had a look at, I think I've looked at about 6 or 7 of them, the main ones that are being marketed. I've had a look at them all and see what they all do. And you do have to pay for them. And the reason why I think you have to pay for them is because they figured out that people will pay for them.
Yeah.
They don't have to sell them because the apparent benefits of AI are very obvious to anybody who's looked into it. Whereas the internet wasn't so obvious.
No,
so they had to make it
came out.
They had to make it free so that people would use it. And if you think if the internet is the platform, and then the AI sits on the platform, and the Google and all the different search engines, they sit on the internet platform. So they had to make the platform free so that we didn't say, oh, I'm not paying for that. I'll go down the library, or I'll go and ask my friend if I want to find something out. They had to make the internet free. And then they had to bring in the mobile phone, of course, which is another part of the control agenda, is get people addicted to their mobile phone. And now you see the younger generation. I mean, you imagine, and I'm sure you know this already, Anne, you've got kids. So you imagine you took all your kids out for the day and every one of them left their mobile in the house.
Yeah, I frequently do that on purpose.
Yeah, well, I think you're very wise to do that. But some families, they'd have a break, they'd have a meltdown. If the kids didn't have access to their mobile phone for more than a few minutes, there would be a breakdown. There'd be a nervous breakdown, there'd be a tantrum, there'd be all manner of behavior, pushback. So people have become addicted to the mobile, they've become addicted to the internet, they've become addicted to the apparent ease of using all these things. And I said a little while ago, I said, well, it's interesting to me that all this technology that's been introduced, we should all be spending 90% of our week in leisure activities and 10% of our week doing some work.
Yeah.
Because that's how it was sold to us back in the 90s.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you take this technology on, you're going to be able to spend 90% of your week doing something else that you like doing, and 10%, 20% doing your work. Well, that didn't happen, did it? So, but AI actually does have the power to do that. The problem with the internet on its own was that you had to operate it.
Yeah.
So unless you can employ people to do on the internet for you and do all the things that you could do on the internet, you had to do all those things yourself. Well, the big difference with AI is that you can program an agent. You can get an AI agent. So think of it like you can employ someone to do your garden, or you can employ someone to wash your car, or you could employ someone to paint your house. Well, you can now employ an AI agent that will do whatever you want it to do, as long as it's lawful. I think it will do it on the internet. So now you can program your AI agent to do all your administration, your marketing, your sales, your research, to critique what you're doing, to look at how you're doing what you're doing, and give you reports and critiques and become your coach, if you like. But you can even go one step further than that, and you can pretty much get AI to do nearly everything that you are currently doing. And I know this is controversial, but it's absolutely true. There are predictions out there, and I think they're true, that the white collar workforce, so those that are working in administration, in research, in some sort of technical capacity, advisory capacity, research capacity. And when you realize that that's probably 60-70% of the world's working population, AI can do everything that those guys are currently doing, do it faster, do it better. And that
you talk about that in your report, don't you? You talk about the end of sort of traditional careers in that report. So, like you mentioned, doctors, lawyers, advisors, roles that people have relied on for decades, to be fair, because they've relied on that expertise from other people. I mean, in
Well,
terms of,
just imagine, Andy, before we move on from that, just imagine that, you're now, you're at 17, 18, and you've maybe done your school qualifications, etc., and you're thinking about going to university to study some kind of a subject.
mm,
How much motivation is there to go to university and study a subject when you can just get into your AI and it knows more about the subject than any professor of any university is ever going to know? And it's going to know more about the subject than you're ever going to know. So why don't, if you're about to embark on a 4 or 5 or a 7-year, academic course, I did 7 years of study.
mm,
Why would someone do that if they could just get an AI that knows more about the subject than any course book, any professor, the brightest people in your class? It can know more about all of those put together, and it will give you all the answers in moments. So is there much of a motivation to even go into some kind of higher education course? I can imagine that a lot of the younger generation are going to say, what's the point?
well, yeah. Plus, you've got the deficit of student loan on top of that, haven't you? Which can run into 6 figures, can't it?
Why would I want to tap myself up for a student loan when I can just pay 20 quid a month for Google Gemini or Copilot or Grok or any of the AIs that are out there? And there's loads of different brands that will know more about the subject than I'm ever going to know. If I was 18 now and I was thinking about going to university, not that I wanted to, but a lot of people do. Is there a lot of motivation for that? So then you've got to say, well, okay, let's say you don't go to university and you're 18 and you're going to rely on your AI. Well, how are you going to better get a job when the company that you might have gone to work for, if you've got the uni degree, is using AI?
Yeah.
What opportunity are you going to have to go and get that job that you might have got if it was 40 years ago? That job, they said, well, you've got to have these uni qualifications in order to even be considered for these jobs. And that's where the majority of people were when I was in my 20s. They were going to uni because they knew that going to uni was going to maybe give them a better job prospect. I didn't go to uni. I just got on with it. But I did my study in my 20s. I did further education, in the evenings and all that kind of thing. But a lot of people went from school to uni, and then they went from uni to the job. And they went from the job to different jobs, went up the corporate ladder, and then that's what they did. And that whole paradigm I think is not going to be, it's not going to be like that at all. And I think it's probably already started. So
how fast do you see that taking a grip, do you feel? I mean, how quickly do you see that happening?
From the research that I've done and other people have done, we're talking months, not months or a couple of years. It's months. It's a number of months. It's not, maybe in the next 10 years we might see it. It's within the next couple of years, I think.
Okay. So when it comes to that side of things, if we think about society at large, then what happens to society if you look at the large portions of society or the population that are affected by that? I mean, that would effectively make them economically redundant, wouldn't it?
When you look at the investment that's going into AI, billions is going into the development of it, and that's already been developed. But this is just the infrastructure rollout of it. If you look at, there's studies that have been done, all of the big companies, all the CEOs are saying, well, if we don't bring AI in, we're going to lose the corporate battles, the landscape that we're in, whatever they're in. We're going to lose if we don't bring AI in, because our competitors are going to be doing things at a fraction of the cost. If you imagine that, my sister, for example, she was the HR director. She's retired now, but she was the HR director for Capgemini. It had 300,000 staff.
Yeah.
Now you imagine the wage bill for that.
Huge.
Now
and
you
the,
could
the administration as well.
Yeah. Just think about the offices, the cost of offices, the cost of staff, salaries, the cost of pensions, the cost of all those things, all the infrastructure costs that go with it. You could probably run that at, maybe 10% of that level, and you could run it more efficiently with 10% of the people. So if you're the CEO of Capgemini, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Are you going to go, no, I'm going to keep my 300,000 people on the payroll and my offices all around the world? Or am I going to scale it back, get more efficient, scale it back, and then I can compete with Microsoft because that's one of their main competitors, right? Or compete with some of the other tech giants that are out there, because Capgemini is basically a tech company. So, what are they going to do? What's the CEO going to do? She's going to go with AI. And if you then look at all of the other big corporates, and the big corporates are the majority of the monopoly board, they're the big players on the monopoly board. Why would any CEO say, no, actually, I'm going to ignore AI. We're going to keep our high cost. And then how are they going to be able to compete with all the other competitors on the monopoly board that are doing things at a fraction of the cost, doing it faster, doing it better at a fraction of the cost?
Yeah.
So what happens to the workforce?
Well, yeah, I mean, you describe something called the AI poverty trap, don't you, in the document as well? I mean, what does that look like in reality for the workforce?
Well, unless you're, cutting hedges, which is one of my favorite ones recently.
I know.
Polishing cars or painting houses. If you're doing administration of some sort or another, or if you're white collar, you are academic in what you're doing, you are processing something. And well, you could say it as simply as this: if you need to use the internet for your job, you're probably there's a very, very high risk of losing your job.
Yeah. I would even go one further. I would even go one further in terms of even blue collar work. You look at the developments over the last few years in robotics as well. You've got the Tesla Optimus robot. There's all sorts of things that are coming out that they again say will be able to replace manual labor far more effectively, faster, quicker. Without any lethargy or people, injuring themselves or anything of that nature. So it's a big threat across the board. It's not just people who are academically inclined, is it?
No, I totally agree with you. There's going to be robots that are going to do everything going forward. But at the moment, the big threat is to the white collar workers.
Yeah.
So they're going to roll these things out gradually. Okay. But the gradual introduction of AI that's been around for a long time is now accelerating. And if you look at the investment that's going in all around the world, the rollout of AI is extraordinary. It's probably the number one sector of investment. If you look at where the big investments are going, most of it is going into AI and the rollout of AI. Yeah. So if you're an investor, if you're running an investment company like I used to run, where are you going to be putting your investment? Are you going to put it into things that are going to suffer from AI, or are you going to put it into things that where you could make a return on your investment by investing in AI organizations or AI companies?
Yeah,
it's pretty simple, isn't it? You might invest in cryptocurrency, you might invest in AI, but you're probably not going to be investing in things that are going to be damaged by AI. You're not going to be a very good investment manager if you're going to put a lot of your capital into things that are going to be damaged by AI. Yeah. So I think there are sectors that are around today that won't be there in a few years' time. I think they'll just disappear.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about this state dependence and control as well that you mentioned in the report. If people lose their ability to earn through just traditional means, and like you've mentioned, it would be the white collar workers that would certainly be the immediate threat in terms of their roles. I mean, what replaces that? If they can't earn traditionally, what happens then?
Well, if we zoom out to what the actual agenda really is all about, the agenda is total control of the mind, body, and spirit. Well, one way to take control of people's behavior is to make them dependent.
Mm.
Yeah. So if you imagine, right, and this is I think this is a very, very good analogy, right? Let's imagine that you were in a prison. So you're now living in a prison. And a lot of people have said for a long time that we live on prison planet. And I have to agree with that, right? So although we have the illusion of freedom, actually we're living in a prison planet. Because we are reliant on things that that are supplied to us.
Yeah.
So if you think of, and I said this to Mel Clark on the interview a couple of days ago, take some of the top things that we're all relying on, right? So take the power. Let's imagine you plug your appliances in and there was no power. What would you do then? Let's imagine that there was power, but you couldn't access the internet. What would you do then? Let's imagine that you could access the power and the internet, but you couldn't get any water.
Mm-hmm.
Let's imagine that you went to the supermarket and there was nothing on the supermarket shelves. We've all become addicted to and completely reliant on these supplies.
Yeah.
Let's imagine that you couldn't breathe because the air was poisonous, right? So if you take all of those things and say, well, where do we get all of those things from? With the exception of the air, we get the power from those that want to control us. We get the internet from those who want to control us. We get the water from those who want to control us. We get the food from those who want to control us. So if you just take four things and say, well, if we didn't have those four things, any one of those four things, our environment would be very difficult, nearly impossible.
Yeah.
You could probably get away with no water for a while. You could probably get away with no food for a while. But could you get away with no power? What could you do? Could you get away with no internet? How long would it be before you crack up, before you can't do what you want to do because you've got no internet? So dependency, and let's go back to the prison planet analogy, right? If imagine that you're now in the physical prison, and if you want to get some food, you've got to get it from when it's available to you. It's made available to you 2-3 times a day. It's not available to you any other time. So now you've become completely dependent on when it's mealtime, right?
Yeah.
Let's imagine that you're sitting in your cell and there's no power in your cell. It's pitch black because there's no windows in your cell. What could you do if it's pitch black? You're completely reliant on the power. If you want to take a drink because you're a bit thirsty, you're completely reliant on the water supply in your cell. Maybe you've got a water fountain in your cell. So you see, and if you wanted to find anything out, maybe they let you go to the library once a day for half an hour, and you might better look on the internet. So if you're in a prison, you're completely reliant on those things. If you then zoom out from the prison and say, well, is it any different? The only difference is there are no walls in this prison because we've been imprisoned by the reliance on those four things. And then you could say there's lots of other things that we're reliant on as well.
Yeah, healthcare would be one, wouldn't it? That's another big
Healthcare,
one for people.
we
Yeah,
believe healthcare is healthcare, which I know you don't, but and I don't either. I
no.
think it's a very misleading term, healthcare. I don't think you could actually justify it to be healthcare in many examples.
We'll call it
There's
medicine.
some ways you could, but in many ways you couldn't. Yeah, you could say it's something else.
Yeah,
So to me, what they've done over, if you go all the way back to go back to the Middle Ages when people were living in mud huts and with grass on the roof, and they made their own food and they got their own water from the river, and they had their fire and they cooked their food, and they might have even caught their food.
yeah,
And then they got themselves a trade, right? So maybe they became a farrier, or maybe they became a carpenter, or maybe they became some kind of construction worker, or whatever it was. Yeah. So people went from living on the land to suddenly they needed a career, and and interestingly, the name that they were given or they were known by was probably linked to their career, right?
yeah.
So if you were doing something, if you were baking something or making something, you were probably given a name that described what you did. So they've got us to operate through these career labels, if you like, and that's part of the programming. It's part of the control, and then they've got us to move out of living on the land and they've got all these conveniences that we've all now become very reliant on.
Yeah.
But then it becomes a way of life. And if you said to younger generation, go and spend a week with no internet, with no power, with no water, and no food, and go and have a good time. Go and camp over in that field without any of those things, and go and have a good time.
I think the younger generation now, even if you just said go and have a good time and go and camp, you've got water, you've got food, you've got a campfire, you've got warmth, you've got a bit of music, but hey, you've not got your mobile phone or the internet. They would still moan at that. That's how reliant they've become on these things. But I get it. We've gone from living off the land, and that was our role, wasn't it? We would work all day on the land to provide for our families. Now we work all day in a career to then use the money that we earn to go to the supermarket to buy the processed food that they all want us to eat, as opposed to good food from the land. It's completely topsy-turvy.
We've gradually been programmed to do what we do, how we do it. So because we've got to go and earn something, in our career to pay for our housing and our travel and our food and our water and our enjoyment and our pleasure and all these different things. And yet, when you unpack that and say, well, given that all of the our ROS members know that there's no money of substance, we've all been duped into putting our energy on the monopoly board where the nominees are using it, because we've got to get some of those credits so that we can pay for our energy and pay for our food and pay for our water, pay for our housing, pay for our enjoyment, pay for our leisure pursuits and all of those things. We can't have a good time unless we've actually done something on the monopoly board to generate some credits that we can use to go and have a good time. And if you don't do that, if you don't operate like that, well, you're a bit weird, aren't you? If you're that guy who lives out in the fields in a tent, people are going to say, well, that's that weirdo over there. He's not doing it the way everybody else is doing it. And I actually say, is that guy the weirdo?
Yeah,
he's
100%.
Yeah.
You mentioned universal basic credit as well in this report, and you mention it or frame it not as freedom, but as a form of control. Do you want to just kind of dig into that a little bit? Because if we've got people that are going to be drastically affected by this AI disruption, and that people's careers and livelihoods are very, very much at risk here.
Yeah.
Something has to replace that, otherwise there would be global uproar. And here's the introduction of universal basic credit. Let's unpack that for a minute.
Yeah. So how do you get, I mean, go back 40 years and try and sell the idea to people 40 years ago of universal basic credit. The overwhelming majority would say, are you crazy? I'm never going to want that. I want to go and get a career. If they were 18, 20, I want to get a career. I want to go and buy a house. I want to get a good car. I want to have 3 holidays a year. I want to get married, have kids. There's no way you're ever going to get me to take state benefit. No way. I'm never going to do that. That would be the majority. There might be some that would say, well, you know what? I quite fancy, an easier life, so I just go on benefits. But that's the minority, isn't it?
Yeah.
But so how do you get people to choose universal basic credit? So you create the problem, right? So the problem will be that your job is gone. And you, along with thousands, millions, tens of millions of others that do your current job, are all unemployed now. Because AI is doing the job that these millions of people used to do. And it won't happen overnight, as in you'll wake up on a Monday and get an email from your boss saying, sorry, your AI is taking your job. It will be a gradual erosion of your role until you're no longer required. So AI will gradually be phased in, and people's working week will gradually be phased out. And that's not just me saying that. That's just about every CEO of every Fortune 500 company who's been interviewed about this is saying that's what's going to happen. Because that's what they're going to do. Because they need to compete with the other Fortune 500 companies that are going to be doing exactly that. So how are they going to compete if they don't do the same? So you create the problem, which is take people's jobs away. You sell the AI in the same way that the internet was sold. It's a major benefit. If you don't use it, you'll be left behind. That's the same with AI. People use it, go, wow, this is amazing. This is incredible. Not realizing that using it and supporting it and basically encouraging the development of it and the rollout of it is going to put you out of your job. And you don't realize it. If you're currently in a white collar role, let's go through it, Andy. I mean, let's suppose that somebody studied for 8 years to become an architect. You can get it to do architect's drawings in a moment. You just tell it what you want it to draw, and it can do it.
In what style? Blah blah blah.
In any method that you want to, you tell it what you want. You have to give it an idea of what you want, obviously. And it will do your drawings for you. So why would someone want to spend 8 years studying architecture if the AI can do it in a few moments? Let's say you want to be a doctor. So you're going to study and be a doctor. Well, AI can do all your analysis in moments. It can take blood samples. It can take urine samples. It can, basically it can examine you. And it can tell you what its diagnosis is. If you wanted to be an accountant, and you want to run an accountancy practice for thousands of clients, which is something I know a lot about. I worked with lots of accountancy firms in the past. And what they do is they crunch the numbers. They might use some calculating tools in their practice, but AI can do your accounts for you in a moment. What do you need an accountant for? You might need an accountant to sign off your accounts if your company's big enough, but you don't need an accountant to crunch the numbers. So you look at any profession, and AI can do it in a heartbeat. And AI can do it better. I argue, and I have looked into it, that AI is better than any human could ever be in what it knows, in its access to records, in its
Yeah.
data, in its best practice. If you ask it what's the top 3 ways of doing anything, it will tell you in moments what the top 3 ways are and how you should be doing it. Now, how do you get that level of competency if you are not using AI? You get people's beliefs about how I'm going to do it like this, I'm going to do it like that, because that's the way I've always done it, or that's the way I was showed how to do it by somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or all those people that are doing it that way might be doing it in a suboptimal way. And that's very, very common in the workplace. It's not what you do, it's how you do it that counts. So if you're not doing it in the optimum way, but AI is, how are you going to compete? How are you going to compete?
Can't, can you?
Yeah. I mean, how much does AI cost? An AI agent, just to put this into context, you can rent an AI agent for, say, £25 a month if you're in the UK.
Wow.
How much does your accountant cost you if you were paying them annually? How much does your full-time employee cost you if you're a boss, if you're a company owner? It's not £25 a month, is it?
No.
It's
No.
it's many times that. Even if you've got very low cost labor, even if you went to some very low cost labor center, you went to some country that had very low cost labor, it's not going to compete with AI.
Yeah.
Once you
So even VAs and people in those types of roles as well, very, very much affected by this, aren't they? Well, like to your point, people may have looked at lower cost labor, removing employed people in preference to VAs. Now we're going one stage further from that even, aren't we?
Look at Henry Ford when he first brought out the production line for making cars. Suddenly you went from guys building cars on a bench, putting all the components together manually, to suddenly Henry Ford had a production line and became the biggest car company in the world very quickly because he could build cars faster than anybody else at a lower cost.
Yeah.
Henry Ford is a very good example. And, that's 100+ years ago that he built his production line. So if you can do that with AI and you can do it faster than any car production line could ever be done, then you look at the benefits for the business that wants to survive on the monopoly board. There, it's not even a choice, is it?
No.
If you're running that organization and you can use AI or not use it, if you don't use it, you're going to probably go bust. If you do use it, you might survive, and you might even prosper by using it because it can do everything much better than the human can. I mean, I think there's only a few things it can't do that are better, and I won't go into those, but you can imagine what they are. So, so if it's in terms of professionalism, best practice, getting the job done fast, getting it done accurately, yeah, it can't do everything. Not at the moment. You can't just set up a company with 10 AI agents and then go on holiday and it's going to do it all for you. You still got to manage it to a point. But the managers of the AI facilities are going to be the minority. That's going to be a minority. Those guys that manage the AI systems until the AI can manage itself, which is even more scary. That's where the careers are going to be, but that's a small fraction of the workforce.
I think we're already into that territory anyway, aren't we? If you look at just the development of certain AI tools, I mean, take ChatGPT for example. Whatever version we're on now, the latest version of ChatGPT, the previous version decided to rewrite itself and make itself better. Wasn't even asked. It just went ahead and did it. And so launches ChatGPT, version 3 or version 4 or whatever it is, that's not been created by developers, but that's been created by its predecessor. which is, yeah, that in itself is scary. So when you talk about this state dependence and this control, I get it. Let's create a problem, mass adoption of the solution, which is the universal basic credit. I mean, do you see that leading to a system where people just become entirely dependent on the state for survival?
Well, they're going to be offered a deal. I've done a lot of research on this. What is this deal that people are going to be offered? Well, in line with the fact that nobody owns anything already, as I've done on my webinars, The Great Taking, and the fact that the birth certificate construct has got an equitable title to everything, but that the living man, woman doesn't own anything at all. So, you don't own the car, the business, the investments, the pensions, all of those things are registered to the birth certificate construct. And anything that is registered to the birth certificate construct is already registered to the cabal, to the controllers. So they've got all the legal title to all the stuff anyway.
That you think you're accumulating for yourself over the years, yeah.
Which they've convinced us all, and I was in this area for a long time as well, that, that's my car, that's my house, that's my business, that's my stuff, yeah? Well, actually, it's not, because it's most of it, anything that is registered is already registered to the cabal, let's just call them the cabal, the controllers. So you don't have anything already. And then when they say, well, if you want to live and survive, we'll give you universal basic credit, but you have to sign over the equitable title to all these things to us. And then we will provide you with access to universal basic credit. You can still live in your house, which isn't, by the way, it's not yours. They won't tell you that. But you sign your house over to us and your mortgage over to us. And we will provide you with universal basic credit. But you have to behave the way we want you to behave.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, just like in the prison, if you don't do what we want you to do, you won't be accessing the canteen 3 times a day. You won't be getting access to the internet, the library where the internet is, for half an hour a day. No, you don't get anything.
Yeah.
And if people say, well, that's extreme, that will never happen, it already is happening in China.
Yeah.
That's what they're doing. They're linking people's behaviors to a social score that then gives you access to services.
Yep.
So if people say, well, that's Orwellian and it's never going to happen, people will never put up with it, right? They won't tolerate it. If you're David Icke follower, we'll all stand up, we'll all raise up, and we'll say, no, we're not doing it. Well, how are you going to say no when there's no access to food?
All the things that you become reliant upon.
Internet.
It's genius.
Are you going to say no when all of those things are taken away, unless you go in universal basic credit? How is saying no going to save you when there's no other access to anything else? There is no alternative to all these, the power, the water, the internet, the food, the healthcare, the whatever. If there's no alternative to any of those things, how is saying no, I'm not doing it, going to save you?
Well, let's go one deeper than this, because if people do end up on universal basic credit, and it sounds like many people will, there is also a bigger, again, zooming out, there's a bigger agenda here at play, isn't there? Agenda 2030. Now, I know that if people were to Google Agenda 2030 and pull up the PDF for that, let's say, on the surface, it looks great, sustainability, progress, all these wonderful things. But you're suggesting something very, very different. Talk to me about that.
Well, they can't sell you on a plan that is going to take away your freedoms and put you into this kind of digital concentration camp. They can't sell that to very many people.
No.
So what they're doing is they're saying, look, the environment is being destroyed by humankind. We've all had we're all playing a part in the destruction of the planet. Look around, look at all the weather patterns that are freakishly different from what they used to be like. That's because of the way that we've treated the planet.
Mm-hmm.
So, in a nutshell, they can convince the majority of people that the weather is definitely different from how I remember it to be.
Oh, it's different from when I was a kid, for sure. I remember all 4 seasons properly. You don't get that now. But as to why it's happened and the reasons that they say it's happened, I would call bullshit on that personally.
Well, if you're gonna convince people that the weather has changed or is changing, you've actually got to change it, haven't you?
Yeah.
So if you can manipulate the weather, which the cabal very easily can.
Mm-hmm.
They can make it snow in the Sahara Desert, literally, and you can go and look on YouTube and see that. If they can create hurricanes, if they can create tempest, if they can create torrential rain, if they can create sunshine or for a long period of time, and drought, they can create any of these weather conditions.
Yeah.
And they've got all the technology to do it. There's a website that tracks all of these things. If you're interested, you can go and look into it. All the weather patterns around the world being tracked, and then how those weather patterns are being created by the cabal. So if you're going to sell people on the fact that the planet is being destroyed by humankind's pollution and abuse of the planet, and look at the weather, because the weather is the evidence, right? So that's the evidence. Well, we must be the cause because we drive a car that is, some greenhouse gases are coming out of the exhaust. And by the way, we have to get rid of carbon dioxide because that's the enemy. I mean, if you just spend 20 seconds looking into that, it's totally ludicrous.
Yeah.
How on earth could anybody survive without carbon dioxide? It beggars belief that anybody could ever believe that by getting rid of carbon dioxide, you're actually going to improve the environment. You get rid of carbon dioxide, you're going to die. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. There's a necessary balance.
Yeah, because the cabal know that hardly anybody does research these days, you can sell the majority of people in the world that humankind is ruining the environment, and look at the evidence is the weather. Look at the polar bears dying in the North Pole, South Pole, etc., etc. Look at the videos of the destruction of the polar ice caps. Look at the difference in the weather. Surely, everybody would be convinced by the fact that the evidence is all around them. When actually what's going on is that they are creating the weather patterns to change because they want to be able to subtly convince the majority of the world population that it's our fault, so that they can roll in UN Agenda 2030 with the sustainable goals, because that's really about the environment, right? And then you can invest huge fortunes into environmental projects and feel good about it.
Yeah.
So they can increase taxes to invest in environmental projects, because you're not gonna get the majority of people voting for tax increases, but you might get them paying more tax if they save their family from the effects of pollution. And all these people that are out there protesting about this, that, and the other pollution, and don't you realize we're killing our kids? We've got to change. We've got to help the environment. So, 30 years ago, it was Greenpeace. 40 years ago, Greenpeace, Save the Whale, Greenpeace, and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And that's now morphed into Greta Thunberg, who is, when she was a bit younger, convincing the majority of people that we've got to change, because if we don't change this, the planet is going to implode.
Yeah. Now we've got
So
this whole net zero thing coming out, haven't we, as well? Yeah.
you've got Bill Gates saying that one of his goals of his huge organization is net zero, and they even talk about it in the in UN Agenda 2030. They talk about it in their conferences in Davos. They talk about this openly. That's their goal. Well, how are you going to live with net zero? It's mind-numbingly ridiculous that humans could live with no carbon dioxide. I look at it and go, oh my God, this is just extraordinary that anybody could ever believe it. But they do believe it. And why do they believe it? It's because only a tiny minority say, actually, I don't trust that. I'm going to go and look into that. That doesn't make any sense to me. I might challenge that. I might go and do some research on that. The majority just go, well, it says it on the news, and Greta Thunberg's talking about it, and it's all over social media, so it's got to be true. So I'm going to go along with it.
Yeah. Start with global warming is what I would say. There's a simple one to start with. Is the Earth really warming up?
Yeah. So, but a lot of people would say, come on, Andy, there's so much evidence to back it up. Look, Al Gore's been talking about it for 20 years, so it's got to be true, isn't it? So, look at all of his videos of the polar ice caps melting and the polar bears standing on a little patch of ice and it's sinking and they survive. Come on, Andy, you've got to realize that that's true. There is global warming. But then when you go and look into it and you see that the sun is the reason why the temperature of the planet goes up and down, and it's got nothing at all to do with pollution. It's got to do with the sun's rays.
Yeah.
And it's to me, it's obvious that that's got to be it. Where does the heat come from? It comes from the
heat
sun.
Source? Yeah.
So if that isn't the cause of the temperature rising and falling on the planet, what is?
Yeah. Well, apparently it's cows farting. It was a while ago anyway. So
well, maybe it is. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's not the sun. Maybe when you're sunbathing, it's not the heat from the sun that's making you warm. Maybe it's the cows. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah,
could be. Well, before we get into any more hilarity, let's bring this back down to earth again. Let's talk about another really big issue here, the transhumanism element. This is the third element or third area that you raise in this paper. Something that most people aren't even aware of. Transhumanism, nanotechnology we talk about. Why is this a big part of the conversation, do you feel?
Well, you see, there are some people like me and you, Andy, who'd say, look, we realise what's going on.
Yeah.
We don't like the look of it. We want to do something else. We want to have another alternative. And, there's a small percentage in the world that have realised that there's a control agenda. And they don't like the look of it. And they're going to try and do something about it, right? So if you are on the side of the equation that is trying to control humanity, which arguably has been going on for centuries already, and I would be one of those that argues that it has been going on for centuries, then how are you going to take ultimate control of those that stand up against you? You take away their ability to think.
Yeah.
You take away their ability to reason. You could argue that a lot of that is already gone because the younger generation in many ways don't challenge anything. They just accept things that they are downloading from the internet to be true.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of the programming is already going on.
Well, it's not just programming, is it? It's relationship building as well, because a lot of yous now are using AI. They don't have friends anymore. They have an AI boyfriend, an AI girlfriend. They seek advice and they seek relationship and they seek communication with AI rather than real people. So it goes so much deeper than just the technology itself, doesn't it? Psychologically, emotionally.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of the younger generation probably think it's a bit of a hassle to have a relationship now. It's easier just to spend your time on your phone or your computer and
Mm.
have your relationship with artificial intelligence. There's even a girl on YouTube who's talking to artificial intelligence and asking it all sorts of very deep questions, and it's reeling off all these answers. And I imagine that she spends a lot of time in a relationship with this AI.
Yeah,
And I can see that happening more and more. And then if
yeah,
you imagine there might be robots coming up in the not too distant future, that
yeah.
you might have a relationship with a robot. Why would
Put
you
a
want to
physical
cover?
element to that. Yeah. There was even a film a while ago, I think probably 2 or 3 years ago now, with, oh, what's his name? Joaquin Phoenix, who
Yeah.
played the emperor
Mm.
in Gladiator, who falls in love with a little pocket AI thing that he's got. Actually builds a relationship with this device,
Yeah.
that he carries around with him everywhere, and literally falls in love with it. So they're pushing it even in entertainment as well. It's everywhere.
It's been going on for a long time. And if you want to know what's happening or what's going to happen, if you want to know what has happened and what's going to happen, watch the movies. Just
Yeah,
get back to the reason I watch movies, because
yeah,
everything that you want to know about their agenda is in the movies.
yeah.
One of the movies that I remember watching years ago was about the Borg.
Oh,
So
Star Trek, yes.
you had
Mm,
Star Trek, right?
mm,
So you had Star Trek, where you had the Starship Enterprise and the crew, which appeared to be able to think for themselves and do things based on their own reasoning and their own logic and their own decisions. And then you had the Borg, and the
yeah.
Borg were all centrally controlled,
It was a
and
hive mind, wasn't it? Yeah,
mind. So they were all walking around and doing things, that if you didn't realize until you started watching the program what they were actually doing. And I say program deliberately because it is a program. But then you realize that they haven't got any ability to decide what they're doing or how they're doing it. They're basically they're centrally controlled. There is a hive. It's just like
mm,
an ant's nest. They all do what the queen ant wants them to do, how the queen ant wants them to do it.
yeah,
That, that's the hive, and that's where we're going. So if you want to remove resistance, if you put yourself, I mean, I talk a lot about the art of legal warfare or just the
mm,
art of war. If you want to defeat your enemy, so if your mindset is control, right? That's what you want. You get off on it. That's what you focus on all the time. Is you love having control. And your enemy is those people that want freedom. So there's your war, right? Those that want freedom, those that want control, or the energy that wants control, because we could go into it a bit deeper.
yeah,
Maybe we will. So if you are on the side of control, you want control, and there's an element of people that want freedom. How do you beat the enemy? You take away their ability to think.
yeah,
So now they can't be resistance to your control agenda because they can't think, because they have to tap into the central intelligence in order for them to think. So that no longer are these small element going to be a threat to the overall control agenda, because they're all being controlled centrally. And how are they going to get to that central control? You might be thinking, well, that's ridiculous. No one's
mm.
going to get me to think in any other way apart from the way that I already do think.
Yeah, it all does sound very Star Trek, doesn't it? And I think that's why people find this too fantastical to believe. But yeah,
Yeah.
do carry on, Ian.
Well, there is no coincidences out there. Everything that is happening all around us at every moment of every day has been orchestrated. I learned that a long time ago. I used to think that things were random. There's even a book called The Logic in Randomness. And I remember looking at that years ago thinking, yeah, that makes sense. All these random things that are going on. actually are all controlled. Does anybody really believe that there are random events of wars, of famines, of stock markets going up and down, interest rates going up and down, all of these different things that appear to be random, where people, very bright, I remember having a debate a couple of years ago with somebody really, academically off the chart, bright, right? Passed lots of qualifications and exams. And I remember having a debate with this fella where he was adamant that everything is random, that there is no order, there's no control. It is everything that is happening is just chaotic. There is no order anywhere. It's just chaotic events and it's dominoes. So one domino falls over, some other ones fall over, and it's all randomly being. There is no central theme to anything. Okay. That's where he was on his side of the debate, and I'm on my side of the debate, and I'm saying, well, I don't believe that at all. I think everything is centrally controlled, and that what looks random is actually controlled. No one won the debate, but I would still believe that I'm right because I've had a very good look at it, and everything that's happening and has happened in the past, if there is a past, has all been triggered. It's all been manipulated to happen exactly the way that it happened, so that we are moved along a journey of control. And if you look at transhuman, how they're going to get us to think differently to the way we currently do is they're not going to say, hey, you're going to need to make an appointment with the thought police and go there for a day, and they're going to plug something in the back of your head and program your brain, because I don't think that many people are going to want to sign up for that.
No.
So what they've done is they've got us, or not me and not you, I'm pretty sure, they've got us to either inject ourselves with nanobot technology, or if we didn't want to inject ourselves with it because we were a bit concerned about that, the risk of that, and they put it in the atmosphere, in the chemtrails, they put it in the food, they put it in the water, they put it in the makeup, they put it in the pharmaceutical products, they put it in everything, they put it in the water, put it everywhere. So you can't really easily avoid it unless you don't access any of those things. And if you don't access any of those things, you're probably dead.
And I can speak to this as well, because, and if you're wondering what we're talking about here, guys, go back to the ROS Media channel, go and watch the interview that I did with a guy called Jesse Beltran. Okay. Yep. Jesse Beltran on nanotechnology. Jesse has developed systems and processes in place to detect nanobot technology, silicon chip based technology inside human beings, and the effects that is having, from the jabs to the food to makeup. As we've said, these things are 2,000 times smaller than a human hair, but they have the ability to coordinate and come together and build structures, silicon-based structures inside whatever the host is. I know this sounds like science fiction, but it's not. As we've already said, many of the things that we see today are rolled out years after the development, decades after they've been developed. Jesse was onto this in the 80s.
Yeah.
So 40 years ago, Jesse Beltran was onto this. And all that's changed is the technology has gotten smaller. But he has actual evidence, physical evidence of these being in people, physical evidence of extracting them from humans as well, and that they can pinpoint where these things decide to position themselves within the human body. Typically, in a normal person, 17 to 30 different stations within the human body that these things will be deployed and then start to do their construction work. So when you talk about,
so you're not going to see them, crawling around.
No,
You're not going to look in the mirror and think, oh, there's a nanobot in my eye. You're not going to see
no,
it, right?
no.
You're not. It's not like that. It's not like insects are crawling around inside you that you could see, or look under a microscope and see them, because they're so small that you probably wouldn't be able to detect them
Yep.
unless you had very sophisticated equipment to detect them. And then they can actually program themselves and they can grow.
Yeah.
And because that's how advanced they are. AI is one thing, which is, I think a lot of people can go, yeah, I can understand that a computer, I can see a vision in my mind of a mainframe computer doing a load of calculations and coming up with, if you look at the movie, The Imitation Game,
Yeah.
where Alan Turing invented the first computer allegedly back in the Second World War. I actually think it was invented a long time before that. And he had these huge, great big device, which was half the size of a room, that was calculating the Enigma code and trying to figure out the Enigma code that allegedly Germans had put into their communications,
Right.
and it would figure it out. Now you go from that to then mainframe computers, and I remember them. I remember going to one of the banks that I used to work with, and they took me to their mainframe room. They had a room with a huge, great big mainframe computer that was running all their computing facility, and it was like huge, enormous, right?
Yeah.
And now you've got a nanobot that you can't even see with the human eye, which can probably do multiples of what that mainframe computer to do that was half the size of a room.
Yeah. Well, even
Big
your phone's more powerful than those things ever were back then. So why would we not consider the shrinkage from a mainframe computer down to something this kind of size? Why would that not progress even further? But yeah, I mean, guys, if you want to, we don't want to get into it too much on this particular episode, but transhumanism is very real. Nanobot technology is very real. It's probably in all of you, whether you had the jab or not, because it's in makeup, it's in food, it's in the atmosphere. There's lots of evidence. Go watch the video that I ran with Jesse Beltran. You're not going to like it, but I think it's an essential watch for everybody to understand the way that they can and will be controlling people's minds, because they're already doing it. They've already been doing it. They've been doing it with military people who have decided to go off the rails and not follow chain of command. By using this nanobot technology, they can switch it on and switch it off at the flick of a switch. And if you're wondering how they do that, think about what your mobile phone runs off. Yeah. 5G, 4G, whatever that is. 6G is the next phase for this technology. So that's how close we are to it. I remember a few years ago, we had, 2G, 3G technology that came out, and everyone was like, wow, 3G is amazing. It's so fast. And now we're at 5G technology. And the key factor for nanobot operation is 6G. So that's how close we are to this being able to affect you. It's very real. And another thing that I was thinking of, Ian, as well, is when we talk about this transhumanism agenda, this sort of mix between biological interaction with synthetic technology and people's acceptance of that as well. Like you said, it's portrayed in movies, but and this might sound controversial, but I'm going to say it. We've also we've had this whole, well, I identify as, haven't we? Not a man, not a woman. I identify as a cat, or I identify as a dog, or I identify as a tree, or whatever it may be. Again, more conditioning, more pre-programming. If you can identify as something that you're not, then what's the problem, or what's the difference in me identifying as a transhuman, as a mix of machine and man?
Well, you've got transgender that moves to no gender.
Yeah.
Because, as you go forward, there won't be genders. There'll just be these transhuman entities so dating and men and women getting married and all those things. It sounds like, well, come on here now, you've gone too far, but that's the direction of this movement. This control is ultimately there is no men and women. It's just one gender, and it's a transhuman agenda, a transhuman being, whatever that being looks like. It might look like a human, but it isn't actually, in the conventional, sense of a man or a woman. It is just a being.
And when we talk about owning nothing and being happy, which is part of this whole agenda, we're not just talking here. You think about this for a second. We're not just talking about the outside elements. We're not just talking about, property, cars, homes, your material possessions.
No.
Can you possibly consider or even think about the fact that you might not even legally on paper own yourself?
Well, that's a very good point, Andy, because you see that the nanobot technology was patented years ago, and that in the law, it pretty much says in the law that whoever owns the technology, the patent to the technology, owns the thing that the technology's running in or running on. Yeah. So if you've got nanobots in you, and you probably have, and I have, and nearly everybody around has, unless you're getting rid of them, and there are ways to do that, which perhaps we'll come on to. Arguably, you're owned already. The patent is in you, the technology is in you. If somebody owns the patent, they can claim ownership.
Yeah.
Of the body.
It's very scary, but very, very real. Very, very real. So
Absolutely.
they're the three elements that you talk about in the paper. What I'd like to do is just connect some of these dots now as well, because, when it comes to stepping back and sort of looking at these three things, AI disruption, digital governance, transhumanism, they may appear like separate issues, but I would suggest that these are part of a sort of a single direction of travel. I mean, what do you think is the end destination if all of these trends just continue unchecked?
Well, I mean, for me, and I've known this for years, because this is why I set up originally Matrix Freedom in the first place. It was nothing to do with getting rid of your mortgage or trying to get rid of your credit card. It was to do with setting up a freedom community. And that's been my motivation from the beginning. And the reason why is because I don't want to be controlled. I don't want anybody I love to be controlled. Yeah. So I don't want this planet the way it's the direction it's going in. But I realised, because a lot of people have said to me who've asked me about the subject, well, Ian, surely we can beat them, can't we? There's 8-9 billion of us, and there's only a small percentage of them, because that's your David Icke mantra is, but look at the masses. All they have to do is rise up and say no, and we'll beat them. You'll beat them back because of the sheer weight of numbers of us. Well, I looked at that and thought, well, no, we're way smarter than that. If they take away the resistance and do it with the transhuman agenda, if they make us completely dependent on their systems, all of their, power, water, internet, everything that we discussed earlier, if they make us dependent, if they take away our ability to think, then how on earth are we going to be resisting them? If we can't even think for ourselves. And then they take away genders, so that gradually there are no genders. And they're introducing advanced technologies which are already there. It's not like they're some mad professors in a lab dreaming up some new ideas. They've already got all these technologies in the bunkers underneath the ground. These things have been around for a long time. They just gradually release them when they're ready. They push things out. They see what reaction they get, and then they push it a bit further. They see what reaction they get. They push another thing out, see what reaction they get. and gradually, it's like it's the old rat in a saucepan analogy, where you turn the heat up very gradually, and the rat doesn't realise until it's too late. Well, we're the rats in the water, in the saucepan. So, although that's probably a distasteful analogy, but that's exactly what is going on. They get off on control. They get off on population reduction. So that if anybody's wondering why are there so many people dying suddenly, a very good friend of mine emailed me yesterday, and there's a guy that we've been on history tours with for the last 20 years. Obviously, I haven't been for the last few years because of my current situation. But there's a guy who's only a couple of years older than me, who's been on the tour. He was the driver of our minibus. We used to go on history tours. I've been doing it for many, many years, looking at different battles allegedly that went on in the First World War, Second World War. Well, he just suddenly died of a heart attack.
Yeah. 62.
62. And it's like people all over the world just suddenly dying. And most of it is heart conditions. If you look at the number of heart-related deaths, it's off the chart. And you look at the embalmers, and they're telling you they're pulling out these horrendous cysts and various, kind of, I can't even describe it. You've got to go and look into it yourself. It's horrific. All because of the jabs. So, why would they want to depopulate? Because they know, they use the term useless eaters. So get past your usefulness. Well, if the AIs come in, you're not that useful anyway. But even if the AI wasn't coming in, you're not that useful after a certain age. So they want to get rid of the older generation. For sure they do. It's just, it's just allegedly draining the planet's resources, because that's another myth of there's a limitation on resources. Well, it's ridiculous. The planet is only a very tiny amount of the planet's inhabited. Whatever the planet is, whether it's whatever the shape of it is, it's only a tiny amount.
Conversation.
Another conversation for another day. It's only a tiny amount inhabited, and the resources are virtually unlimited compared to what we use. So that bullshit about we've got to constrain what we use because we're going to run out, that's another bullshit story from my research. So if you join all the dots up, where we're going is total control. There's going to be a lot less on the planet because a lot of them are going to be killed off. If you look at the Deagle study, which is the military study that the US military do quite regularly, they do a population forecast. Their forecasts are very accurate, pretty much. They're forecasting a 60% reduction in world population.
That's
EAGAL. Look at that.
So let's talk a little bit about the alternative pathway, because you do also mention this in the document, in the paper. You don't just outline the problem, and this is what I like. There's plenty of people talking about the problems in the world, but what about the solution? You present what you call a freedom pathway. And I want to dig into that in a couple of minutes as well. But you, at a high level, you mentioned the Great Escape protocols and what they're designed to do. And you talk about sort of separating the living individual from the legal persona. And that is just a foundational step, really. So maybe we could just dig into those for a little bit, the core protocols, because I think these are, I know we're kind of going back into some of the topics that we have discussed previously. So maybe just looking at this on a higher level, if someone's going to separate the living individual from the legal persona, why is that such a foundational thing for somebody to do to begin with?
Well, the living individual is the agent for the body corporate construct, which is on the Monopoly Board of Commerce. The living man, woman is being controlled by what the principal's doing on the Monopoly board, right?
Yeah.
So anything that's going on the monopoly board, the living man, woman is being controlled by the activities of the principal. The principal is the artificial birth certificate construct. So all of the problems that are going on the monopoly board, the debt, the bankruptcy, the owning nothing, the needing to survive, going out to work, AI, all of the things that we've already spoken about are basically all going on the monopoly board, with the exception of the nanobots that are going on inside your body. Everything else that's going on is going on that monopoly board of commerce. So if you're going to win the game, you need to play the monopoly game much smarter. And the pillar of playing it smartly is to put new pieces on the board as your proxies. So you're putting a proxy, a nominee. You're going to recoup your energy from the monopoly board through your proxy nominee, and you're going to hold that energy in your treasury, which is the asset fortress protocol. You're going to use the infinite money, which is based on the Clifford protocol, to recoup your energy from the monopoly board back to through your private treasury, so that you're now able to operate independently. So even if AI ruins your career, you can still operate in abundance. You don't need to go to work, because you can spend and recoup through your private treasury. This is the reason why I developed the Clifford protocol, the infinite money, the currency creation protocol, is because you can replace your career with your spend and recoupment cycles through your private treasury. You are recouping the energy you've already put on the monopoly board from past years. And now you can finance your future years, current and future years, through the spending and recoupment through your private treasury, where even if you lost your job next week because of AI, you can now rely upon the fact that you've got all this abandoned signature credit that you can recoup, spend, recoup, spend, recoup. That is the pillar of the steps towards freedom, right? If you are relying on going out to work, or maybe you're relying on universal basic credit is the only way you can survive, wouldn't it be better to be spending and recouping your abandoned signature credit?
Where there are no terms and conditions attached to that as well.
Where you run that because it's your right to run it in the way that I've developed the Clifford protocol, which is the underlying abandoned credit filing methodology, which we describe it as the infinite money or the currency creation. It's all based on the Clifford protocol.
You then you have the asset fortress protocol, and obviously the envoy protocol that you mentioned there as well. That separation, that kind of capacity correction, as you call it.
If you did the envoy protocol, which separates the living man, woman from the birth certificate construct and enabled you to put new pieces on the monopoly board, which is your nominees, your proxies, your grantor trusts, which are going to do your tax filings to recoup your signature credit, your abandoned signature credit. You're then going to put another nominee on the board, which is the asset fortress protocol. So now you've got three protocols. You've got the envoy, you've got the infinite money or currency creation, because they're very, very similar. And then you've got the asset fortress. If you just had those three, now you can operate independently of your career, you don't have to go into universal basic credit, and you don't have to worry about them taking your assets that they've already got legal title on, because you can transfer the title ownership into your asset fortress. So now you're pretty robust, You've got rid of your debt because you've used your credit recoupment, your abandoned credit recoupment of the signature credit to discharge all your debt. You're now able to operate, and then this notion that you're going to be given a choice. Your job's gone. You're going to lose your house unless you sign over your mortgage and your house to the cabal. By the way, you have to comply with our universal basic credit. You don't have to make that choice, because you've got control, because you've got your own private treasury of spending and recouping the energy that you've already put on the board from past years. That is a very, very pivotal part of the plan.
Yeah.
It's a tipping point moment when you realize the reason why I've developed this is not because I want to show people how to get rich.
No.
The reason I developed the protocols is to show them how to survive compared to the threat of universal basic credit, AI, and the nanobot technology and the transhuman agenda.
Well, let's talk about that as well, because we mentioned at the very beginning, didn't we? The whole point of this control and the driver behind this control is dependency on the things that we need. Water, food, internet, power, healthcare, all these things that people have become very dependent on. I'd love to touch on something that is certainly very close to my heart and your heart. I know that, the Freedom Plan, because you mentioned that as well. Beyond the financial side, you talk about building a parallel infrastructure. What you call the Freedom Plan, to me, is why we do what we do. It's not about creating money. It's not about making people financially secure. We talk about independent energy, clean water, natural food, private communications, real healthcare. I mean, why do you feel these physical elements are just as important as the financial ones? Why not just have somebody, do their currency creation and then just buy themselves a nice car, buy themselves a nice house, shop at Sainsbury's every week or whatever?
Well, because if you stay in that world of thinking that everything on the monopoly board is real, and you can operate and you can run your life, on the monopoly board using your artificial construct on the monopoly board. It's not yours, it's theirs, but you get to use it. And if you think that you're going to be able to recoup your abandoned credit, and you're going to be living in your nice big house, driving your nice big fast car around, and the nanobots aren't going to affect you, and the transhuman agenda is not going to affect you, and the rollout of AI isn't going to affect you, and the 15-minute cities aren't going to affect you, and the control agenda of being policed through what you purchase isn't going to affect you, because they're going to track and trace everything through digital ID. If you think none of those things are going to affect you, then you're hurtling towards a very, very rude awakening.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter how many digits you've got in your bank accounts, all of those things I've just listed are going to completely affect your lifestyle. That's even if you know that your lifestyle has been changed, because if they take over your mind, how you will even know whether your lifestyle has been changed? You won't even know. You won't even realize.
So talk to me a little bit about, opting out then. I mean, are we talking here about opting out of the system entirely, or sort of creating an alternative alongside that?
So a lot of people over the years, and there's loads and loads of examples, and I've studied and I looked into this, right? I kind of realized that there's a major problem. And they don't want to be part of it. They want to be part of the control agenda. So what they do is they set up communities, and this has happened a lot around the world. They'll go and create a community somewhere in a remote part of the world, and they'll want to live there, right?
Yeah.
And that, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but a lot of people don't want to do that. They quite like where they are,
where they live,
their environment. They don't want to go and live in the middle of the wilderness somewhere, in some kind of community. Maybe they don't like the people in that community. I don't know. Who knows what their motivations and their feelings are? Yeah. But a lot of people have done that, right? And they think that that's the answer. They'll have their own energy. They'll have their own water. They'll grow their own food, and they'll have their commune. and it's it's a bit like Robinson Crusoe type stuff. It's a bit like they're all living on an island somewhere.
Yeah.
Now if that's what they want to do, good luck to them. And who am I to say they shouldn't do that? But I don't think that's the majority of people that want to do that.
No.
I think the majority of people want to, certainly for as long as they possibly could, carry on where they are because they like where they are. They got used to where they are. They don't want to move into the wilderness, and they don't want to rely on what arguably would be substandard facilities because they, maybe this community hasn't got the financing to build the next level of all the conveniences that they've got used to. So my solution is what you do with the freedom plan. And I thought about this for a long time, and I came up with it over a period of time. Was if you can't beat them at what they're doing, you can't rise up and say no like David Icke.
No,
because that isn't going to work, David.
Fighting isn't going to work. We know that. Taking that approach isn't going to work.
You can't take them on militarily. You can't get an army and take them on because they're too powerful. You can't take them on financially because they control the system. You can't take them on with regards to protesting because that doesn't work. You can't all, gather together in some sort of community and go and live somewhere else because a lot of people don't want that. So what's left? What's left is to create your own infrastructure. And the way that you create your own infrastructure is through the recoupment of signature credit. So if there is, and I've just done this study and I've just published this report, if there is on average $60 billion a year of taxes being paid by the nominees, that is the taxes of the use of your abandoned credit, your signature credit, and that's how much you could recoup each year. So if your community was recouping 60 billion a year, and if you said, well, okay, let's take 20% of that to build our independent infrastructure, that's 12 billion a year.
Yeah.
That you can use to finance an independent community.
Yeah.
Of independent energy, water, food, travel, internet, money, marketplace, of up to 100,000 people. If you take a 60 billion and divide it by 100,000, it's giving you up to $1 million a year.
Yeah.
Well, that's more than enough for anybody I know.
Yeah.
If you could survive on
getting back down to basics as well, which is, what a lot of people are striving and really yearning for now. Life's got too complicated, too technologically advanced for them. People are wanting to get back to basics, I feel. But like you said, maybe they want to get back to basics, but they want to do that where they're at, where they are.
I mean, to me, I lay my cards on the table. I know long term that we won't be able to live in the communities that we're currently in because they'll be 15-minute cities. All the people around us will be transhuman. There won't be the experience that we have today will be completely different going forward. Eventually, we'll have to move away from all the others. We will be the ones that the others will be targeting, by the way.
Yeah.
And I know this. If you look at what happened in the pandemic, those that didn't take the jab were ostracized. Those that said, look, I'm not wearing the mask, got ostracized.
Yeah.
Those that weren't doing what all the others were doing were ostracized.
Yeah.
I know I'm not under any illusion here that you could be the only one in your street that doesn't have the nanobots in you, that's living on with an independent energy supplier that doesn't come from the cabal, and your neighbors aren't going to have a go because they will. So eventually our community has to go and find its own place to live eventually.
So maybe you want to think about some land with a big fence around it.
So how do you buy land? You see, you can't go and buy land if you don't have a budget to do it. You're going to have
Exactly.
to play monopoly because the whole of the land in the world is on the monopoly board, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
About the only place that hasn't already been claimed, arguably, is Antarctica.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? I don't want to get into that conversation because that's a
No,
whole.
we won't talk about whether it's all snow and ice just right now.
No, but nearly everywhere else is already registered. Yeah. So there are sovereign nations that claim ownership of these land masses.
Yeah.
So if you want to go and get some land, you're going to have to buy it from whoever claims it already, right?
Yeah.
And how are you going to do that with no digits to do it with?
Well, you're not going to do it on universal credit, are you? Let's be fair.
No. So if you've got
credit,
exactly, so if you've got a budget of up to 12 billion a year based on current tax payments, you should be able to go and buy some land with that kind of that kind of cash flows coming in to your community.
Yeah.
So you see the Old Souls Nation, OSN Nation, which is a foundation that is going to receive a share of the membership recoupment, which, by the way, isn't going to cost the members. They're not going to suffer that deduction without being able to recoup it, because they can recoup the amount of the contribution to the Old Souls Nation, so that everybody gets 100% of whatever it is that they're recouping each year. It's not a diminishing amount year by year by year. It gets smaller and smaller and smaller. No, it stays fairly constant. And then we will be able to finance all of the infrastructure. The first is free energy. There's free energy around today. There's many devices. You've interviewed some guys who are already doing it.
I'm going to give another plug right here. Go back to the ROS Media channel, guys, and watch my interview with a lovely guy called Haslan Back from a company called ENG8. They have free, abundant energy. Proven, it works, but clearly they are lacking funding. And isn't that strange how they're lacking funding for something that is so transformational to the world?
Yeah, so there you go. You see, they can deliver free energy to your house, to wherever you are, your factory, whatever it is, and yet they can't get investment, because who wants to invest? If you're running a venture capital fund or an investment fund of some kind, they're not going to let you invest in that.
No.
The prospectus of your investment fund isn't going to permit you to invest in stuff like that, because you can only invest in things that are in line with the control agenda, like AI.
So let's talk a little bit about scale then, because I think it's probably the next logical place to go on. If we've got the Freedom Plan, and this is what we are all working towards here at Republic of Old Souls, is to create this infrastructure using abandoned credit to fund the Freedom Plan.
Yes.
As far as scaling this, I think, we've had this question often, haven't we, from many people. Can it scale? Is it practical to think that we can scale this?
Oh, well, I've just published a paper this morning at Ecclesia Law, and I've put it out on our Telegram channels, which is, how long does it take to recoup abandoned credit, and what rights do you have to it? So that's the rights of the grantor trust, which you put on the monopoly board as your proxy nominee. What rights in the law currently does that proxy nominee have to recouping the signature credit, the abandoned signature credit? It's in my document. I've done a short video about it as well. Now, unless the law changes, and it's highly unlikely not to change, because the elites use this methodology themselves. So a lot of people say to me, Ian, surely once they realise that you figured out how their system works, they're going to change the system, aren't they? Well, why would they change the system that they are using for their own benefit? It doesn't make any sense to me that they're going to be able to do it and we're not, because it doesn't work like that. The law is the law. The law applies to everybody. You can't have the law only applying to some people and not applying to other people. because that's ridiculous. So the law, which is it's the UCC, the Uniform Commercial Code, that is governing securities law. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
All of the abandoned credit recoupment is under securities law.
Yeah.
UCC. So how are they going to change the UCC, which applies all across the United States, but it only applies to some people and not other people? And your grantor trust is got an EIN from the United States system.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how is it not going to apply to your EIN, the one that you're using for your proxy nominee grantor trust, but it doesn't apply to the elite's EIN? It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't work like that. It either works or it doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
So I wrote a paper last week. Is it going to bankrupt the United States Treasury?
Well, that was going to be my next question. You know, for those who are maybe worrying about that, are we going to bankrupt the system? What would you say to that then?
Well, that question in itself reveals that there is a lack of understanding of that there is no money of substance.
Yeah.
So if there was a treasure chest somewhere or a great big safe somewhere, and if you took out 20% of it and put it over to one side, and you kept on doing that every year, well, then the treasure chest is going to run out. Yeah.
Yeah.
The fact that there is no money of substance and there's only energy, there's an infinite amount of energy. There should be no poverty in the world because the banks are creating credit all the time using our energy, our signature our credit energy all the time. So how is that going to run out? It doesn't run out. So given that there's no limit to how much credit can be created, that world debt clock is going up and up and up, spiraling up every moment of every day, never coming down. If you say, well, if the United States wants to create some currency because it wants to finance something, how do you think they do it already? They just create it from signature energy. Yeah.
It never ceases to amaze me how when it comes to, you know, certain policies or certain things that the government wants to bring into force, whether it be housing or an environmental issue or schooling or whatever it may be, that they raise taxes to accommodate that. But when war breaks out, the money seems to be very readily available all of a sudden, doesn't it? At a heartbeat.
I wonder how many people have looked into this, because I did, because it used to intrigue me, right? A little fellow called Adolf Hitler gets into power in the 1930s, allegedly, if you believe in the history books, right? And the Weimar Republic is bankrupt. So the Weimar Republic, German Weimar Republic, is bankrupt. You've got mass unemployment. That's how the Nazi Party got into power, if you believe history, right? They were elected because there was mass unemployment and there was people living in cardboard boxes on the street, right? You had the Great Depression in the United States. If you believe history, the early 1930s was the Great Depression. Literally people living on the street in cardboard boxes because they had lost everything in the crash of the early 1930s.
Roaring 20s,
yeah. You had the boom and then you had the bust.
Yeah.
Which was all engineered, right? In my opinion, that was all engineered. Now, how do you go from being bankrupt, the Weimar Republic, where people are taking a wheelbarrow full of notes down to the local shop to buy a loaf of bread? Yeah. There are videos of this. I'm not joking when I say that.
Yeah, I've seen them.
How do you go from that to financing one of the biggest armies and air forces in the world? And your Navy's not too shabby either, with all the U-boats, warships, aircraft carriers, blah, blah, blah. How do you finance all of that? By raising taxes from people that are living in cardboard boxes.
Yeah.
Has anybody ever thought about that? Because I did, and I'm thinking, well, there must be a currency creation model going on somewhere. Because how can they go from that state of being in the early 1930s to 1939, when allegedly the Second World War breaks out, and they've got one of the most powerful armies, navies, and air forces in the world.
The world, yeah. Yeah.
How do they do that? And they do it because of currency creation. And they do it because Hitler and his people, who were basically financed by those who understand ex nihilo credit creation, they introduced that system. Strangely enough, around the same time as HJR 192 from 1933. Strangely enough.
Go and read The Creature of Jekyll Island. That's what I would say.
So that's how they financed the growth of the Weimar, what was the Weimar Republic, into the Nazi state, into the Second World War. And then you've got your Bretton Woods in 1944, where all the other nations came in, and every nation adopted that policy of ex nihilo credit creation, which is money out of nothing, money out of the signature, energy transference onto the monopoly board. Then you can finance what you want. I remember in 2008, when all over the news in the programming of the mainstream media, it was telling you that the banks were going bust. You had Think Bank going bust in Iceland. You had Northern Rock going bust in the UK. Lehman Brothers going bust. Banks all over Cyprus going bust. Banks everywhere going bust, right?
Yeah.
And people queuing up around the street to get their money out of the banks because they were worried.
Yeah.
And then Alistair Darling stood on the steps of the UK Treasury and said that he'd been up all night with all of his colleagues, and they'd solved the problem. They're going to inject £50 billion into the banking market to stop the banks from going bust.
Yeah. Where did that come from?
Where did that 50 billion come from, Alistair Darling? Because I asked that question. It's like, well, where did you get it from? If there's a credit crisis, where did you get the credit from if there's allegedly a credit crisis?
Yeah.
If there's a lack of credit, where did it come from? Obviously, they printed it, yeah? They created it from ex nihilo credit creation.
Yeah.
Now, when the alleged pandemic broke out, there was trillions of dollars that was pumped into the economy around the world. So where did that come from?
Yeah.
Where does Donald Trump currently? Apparently, there's $250 billion required to take on Iran. Where does that come from?
Yeah.
It all comes from ex nihilo credit creation. So how is it that countries in Africa don't have anything, and there's people living in squalor and living out in the wilds because they don't have any? The African continent, one of the poorest continents in the world. How is it that is allowed to continue like that when there's unlimited credit? Is it not a control agenda?
Yeah.
Is it not meant to be like that? Because if everybody had an abundance, then you wouldn't be able to control the masses, would you? So you've got to create the haves and the have-nots, because if everybody had everything, then nobody would want to go to work and go on the slavery model, would they?
No.
So you have to have the haves and the have-nots and the poor and the rich. You have to create that illusion so that you can maintain motivation of people who want to go out to work and do all the things that need to get done.
Yeah.
That's why. So is it scalable, what we're doing? Well, all the time that there are taxes being paid by the nominees, and all of those taxes are owed back to those that have woken up to the reality of how this monopoly board works, i.e. those that are coming on this channel, those that are coming on my webinars, those that are learning about ex nihilo credit creation, signature credit recoupment, those that are realizing that you don't have to play the game of monopoly by slaving away at your job or your business. For those people that I already know is a very tiny minority, the freedom plan is being built for you.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about, what this means then. Just before we kind of wrap up and get into final thoughts, for somebody that's maybe watching this for the first time, just trying to make sense of everything, maybe some light bulbs have gone off, maybe some little aha moments here and there. Maybe it's just getting you to stop and think and not just take things on face value at a media level. What should they be actually focusing on right now, do you feel?
Well, in the art of war, you've got to be stronger than the opponent to win. You never parley unless you've already won. How are you going to win against AI, transhuman agenda, but universal basic credit, 15-minute cities, nanobot technologies, digital ID? How are you going to win against that unless you are stronger than that? In my opinion, the only way you can beat that is you become independent of it. You extract the nanobots from your body, which you can do through the plasma technology. You can do it through Masterpiece and other technologies.
Yeah.
If you don't need to suffer from AI, you can make it work for you. You can recoup your abandoned credit. You are now in a stronger negotiating position because you're not reliant on the cabal's control agenda and their control infrastructure. If you've got access to your own infrastructure, because you're one of the community that is Republic of Old Souls members, envoys, and you are taking part in the recoupment of your signature credit, and you've got access to free energy, you've got access to water, you've got rid of the nanobots, you've got your own communications which aren't tracked and traced, you've got access to everything you need. Now you're in a stronger position you don't even need to negotiate with the cabal.
No.
Because you're independent of them.
Yeah. Like we said, there's no point fighting this. If you try and fight it, you're not going to win. You need to position yourself so you don't even need to think about a fight. So that whatever that control agenda is that's going on over there, if you've got yourself set up well over here, it doesn't affect you.
Now, a lot of people have said to me, yeah, but what happens in ultimately, we go and get our own land somewhere. We all go and live on our land, and we're humans, and everyone else is this transhuman entity going on over there, right? How are we going to get the land? Where are we going to get it from? And will they leave us alone? Yeah, or are they going to send their drones over and carpet bomb and or nuke us or whatever because we're the outliers? Well, my answer to that is that if you've got the budget and you can create a sovereign nation, and if you look into how sovereign nations have been created throughout history, they get land, they've got a population, they've got their own culture, they've got their own thing going on, right? And then they can get sovereign status.
Yeah.
Well, you can't get sovereign status without a population, without some financing, without some infrastructure.
No.
You've got no hope in hell of getting it like that. So that's my solution: is you become a sovereign nation.
Yeah.
And you can only become a sovereign nation if there's a lot of you who've come together. You've got your own culture, you've got your own beliefs, you've got your own financing, you've got your own infrastructure. Then you can get your own land, and then you can get your sovereign nation status.
So, final thoughts on this, Ian, in terms of wrapping up, because we've spoken about a lot today, and I think a lot of people new to this for the first time, it's a lot to take in, isn't it? It really is. I mean, we're kind of used to these conversations now, but do you feel people need to act urgently on this? Do you feel it's a gradual shift?
It's step by step. I mean, you're not going to watch this interview and go, aha, tomorrow I'm changing my whole life and we're going to do all the protocols and it's all going to change for me overnight. It's not going to be like that. I mean, in my video and my document I've published today, how long does it take for credit recoupment? Well, it can be 6 to 9 months, unless there's a problem. And if there's a problem, it might be a year. So, we're talking about getting this in place. if you haven't started doing credit recoupment, signature credit recoupment, you're not going to be able to live the lifestyle that I've outlined and we've been talking about for 6 months to a year anyway.
No. And who knows where we're going to be from an AI perspective and from an employment perspective in, 9 months to a year. It's developing so rapidly, isn't it, that a lot could change over the next 12 months for sure.
With the billions going into AI rollout, people are going to start to experience the effect of that very soon.
Yeah.
They're not going to invest billions and billions into the rollout of AI and nobody notices. It's just not going to happen, is it? People are going to start noticing. There will be lots of big companies shedding their workforce within the next year or two, in my opinion. Not just my opinion. Lots of others have done the analysis. Even if you were to go into AI yourself and say, what is the forecast for the number of people in work in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, it will tell you. The AI will actually tell you this.
Yeah. How many people it itself is going to replace. Yeah. Which is quite ironical, really. Well, Ian, thank you for taking some time out again today to kind of walk us through this and talk about it. Clearly, it's a much, much bigger conversation than just finance or just the protocols. It's really about the direction humanity's heading, isn't it? And the choices people make over the coming months and years. I guess the big question is, what choice will you make? Would be the big question that people need to be asking themselves.
I've said for years that every problem has a solution. Said it on all my webinars. Now, the biggest problem that we're all facing is the ultimate destruction of humankind. If that can be solved in the way I've outlined it, then that is an example of a solution to the problem. David Icke has been talking about dystopia and all of these subjects for 35 years, but his solution is just say no. My solution is practical. My solution is very well thought out. My solution, I believe, has a much higher probability of working than just saying no.
Yeah. Well, guys, I appreciate anyone who's stuck with us. I know it's been another long one, but it's been a very in-depth subject to talk about and something that clearly affects each and every one of us. So again, I would ask the question, what choices will you make? If you still feel that you're not informed enough to make choices, then please dig into the content that we have here. We've only just scratched the surface today. We've got tons of content on the media channel. You can join our private members association as well. We'd love for you to share this content. We are streaming live right now over multiple channels, but we need people to share that content as well to get the message out there. If you know people who are aligned with what we're talking about, people in your community, people who get it and genuinely think something's off, something's not right, and I need to do something about that, but I don't know what it is, then you're definitely our tribe of people. And we'd welcome you to the Republic of Old Souls. So once again, thank you for watching today. We will see you on the next episode. But for now, have an amazing day. Bye for now, guys.
Bye now.